Hey folks, my name is Tad, and if this is the first time you're joining the Business of Cyber show, thanks for your time. Thanks for coming. I'm super excited. Got an amazing guest that just finished some time out at the White House talking about cyber talent. I'm really excited to talk about Business of Cyber. And if you recall, for those of you who have joined us before, Business of Cyber is all about the non-technical side of cybersecurity, which is really some of the biggest challenges that CISOs, organizations, OT, IT directors are having. We talk about the people side of business. We talk about the time that it takes to deploy resources within cybersecurity, and we talk about budget. Between these three things, there's not enough of them going around. We're on episode, I think, 32, and retaining cyber talent is within that first realm. We want to talk about the people of cybersecurity. So whether you are a junior in your cybersecurity journey or whether you are a weathered CISO, it's a place to kind of join and talk more about these different topics. And to do that today, I'm joined by somebody that I have had a relationship with for some time. We met about 6 or 8 years ago, but we just recently got back in touch. And I'm going to introduce her pretty soon. But what we're going to talk about is the overall jobs report within the United States, as well as globally, as well as some major indicators of what's changing year over year as it relates to job postings, the type of positions that people are looking for. And we'll spend about half our time going through some data models that our special guest has been able to put together with over a decade in the space doing just that. And then we're going to talk in the latter part of our episode about retaining cyber talent. I want to get down to the controls level. I want to talk about people. I want to talk about culture. And I'm really excited to have our special guest. Our special guest is coming from us straight from DC right now. She was at the White House yesterday. I want to hear all about it. But Deidre Diamond, thank you for joining the show. It's great to talk to you again.
It's great to be with you, Ted. I love the work you're doing and the focus on IoT. It's so much needed. So good to be with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one thing I will tell the crowd and anybody that's joining us, we had almost 100 people register for this. There's usually a 4 or 5x response or view within 7 days of the show. So even if you can't get to us right now and you're listening later, send us a comment, and we always want to feel back from that. I can see actual comments that get placed on LinkedIn within StreamYard. So if you have a question or a comment, go ahead and post it up, and we'll be able to place it up there. Deidre, let's dive in. Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to. Tell us about what you do. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to actually showcase a little bit of a bio slide right there.
Awesome. Yes. Well, as you said, Ted, I'm in DC. I had the pleasure yesterday of attending a White House event that was to not only recognize the SANS workforce study that was released yesterday that CyberSN and a few others participated in, but also to discuss the Biden administration's initiatives on cyber jobs and really some great announcements that they made. So it was epic. As a civilian, to be in that experience around all the government officials and just in the Eisenhower House and in the library, having these conversations about what I'm passionate about, which is protecting the humans in cybersecurity professions. It was fantastic, and I have lots to share.
Very, very, very cool. So when we first met, it was actually at Black Hat, if you recall. We were doing a very similar thing. We were doing an interview with a guy that had a security TV show, right? But yeah. I think I had just started my current company, which would have been, I guess, 7 years ago. But CyberSN had been around for, I think, 2 years. Tell us more about CyberSN, what it is, and I want to do that just to lay a foundation of how entrenched you are in the job market for cyber.
Absolutely. So CyberSN's 10 years old this October, and our first many years was strictly focused on solving the talent matching problem that we have. We all know that we can get lots of interviews as practitioners, but never the right match, and that is costly to society in a way that really bothered me. And so we founded the taxonomy that is supporting job matching today based on tasks and projects. And of course, it's aligned to to NICE, it also extended and covers 10 categories and 45 functional roles today. And so, out there offering services from matching to full service around talent acquisition was really where we spent the first good 6 years or so. And then utilizing that platform to offer other services that can empower security leaders to manage their talent, to understand what talent they have, to upskill and retain talent. And so for the last many years, I've been very much so personally focused and building out that arm myself. It's been very rewarding. Of course, our data through all of this has brought us, to the White House and other great benefits for society. And ultimately, our job is to make it such that cyber professionals are cared for. And one of the things I called for at the meeting yesterday was a compliance control. We have a severe problem where capitalism has met our security profession, and it's not working, and we will not be able to protect ourselves. So I find myself fighting now for rights, not just for women's rights, which I do a lot of. We haven't talked about. I'm also the founder of Secure Diversity, also for all of security professionals' rights. It's sort of ridiculous to be, in one hand sitting in the White House and celebrating all these things that we've done to bring cyber professionals in, and at the other hand, knowing how many cyber professionals with experience have been unemployed for 6 months to a year, and who have not had any investment for continuous training, and that's what's needed to protect. So I find myself working on that intersection a lot right now.
Yeah, well, you bring up a good point. I mean, our job is never done. I think the people game is super important. I think that there's not a shortage of technical solutions that are out there. There's not a shortage of incoming threats. And as a result of the complexity, at least in the critical sectors alongside those threats, there's a lot of business impacts that we're trying to avoid, right? To me, it's always come down to the people. What people do you have on your team? What's their capabilities? How are you growing those capabilities? And then the big thing is, how do you retain these folks and keep them excited to work there, motivated to work there, keep them mentally healthy? These are the things that we're going to dive into. But I'm excited to spend the next, let's say, 15 to 20 minutes going over a pretty incredible data set. Now, you didn't talk too much about it, but ladies and gents, I've actually seen the CyberSM platform really powerful, where it's not just a placement of this person to this role. It gets really granular about what the core skill sets of those people are. How do you match the core skill sets with the right projects that have been outlined by the asset owner? Can you talk a little bit more about that level of granularity that you take to your work, Deidre? And then while we do that, I'm going to pull up the first couple data points that you wanted to share.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate you pointing that out, because I think that we've overcomplicated the idea of matching people to jobs. And as somebody that joined the business of job matching in the early 90s, while things were still written down on paper and not digital, I could tell you that when I went back into staffing after leaving it for 10 years and getting into software, which is where I went at Rapid7, anyhow, is to say that, matching became making a job description the persona of a human we think we want to hire, versus making a job description the actual tasks and projects that one needs completed and the percentage of time that an employer would think that the human would spend on each one of those functional roles. And that's what we used to do on paper when we were making matches, is have the conversation of functional roles, what tasks, what projects, how much time are they spending on all of this. And that went to the wayside when job descriptions became almost free to a couple $100 to post out on the web, whereas it used to be $5,000 on the Sunday paper, and you got one ad for one Sunday, and that's it. And of course, that would be equivalent of 15,000 now. And so my point is to say that a taxonomy that speaks to every task and every project that's aligned with a functional role across all categories of cybersecurity, used to create job descriptions and to create profiles, allows for easy matching. there might be a bad actor here or there, but in general, humans don't want to apply to jobs they don't think they're qualified for. And when we make job descriptions about the job and not the persona of the human, we can actually let humans match themselves, and it works. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
I'm a big believer in that. I mean, we've got this 3.5 million that we put on the screen. That is current, or that 23?
And that's globally, and I don't know, there's so many different stats out there. This is not one that I chose, meaning I know you grabbed this, but in the US, we're seeing about any given 30-day period 160,000 jobs a day posted out in the US, which doesn't really match what we hear in job openings. And now that's right now. I also think that this number includes federal jobs. The
Right.
job posting data that I'm going to speak about today is not federal jobs. And to anybody that's listening or having children out there that want to get into cyber, or friends or family, I can't stress enough how I would recommend that they apply to federal jobs. Federal cyber jobs are now accepting non-degrees. In fact, that was a big part of yesterday at the White House, was this concept of skills-based hiring. The Biden administration has passed that sort of legislation to say hiring without degrees in the federal government is not a problem to get into cyber whatsoever.
That's one.
Yes.
So, I wanted to go back to a point that you made previously. You said something that the owners of these roles are building job descriptions for the role and not so much for the people. And if they could fix that, then they'd hire better people and we'd solve this problem. Dive into that for a minute and maybe overlay it on where all these job postings are, because you just said it. If defense is going to start taking role or people on that don't have degrees because it's the right person for the job, tell us a little bit more about that, because I'm a huge believer in that methodology, but I don't know the details that you're operating with.
Yeah. So skills-based hiring, what it means to me, and it's a new term for me. It's the White House is using it. What I always just talked about is matching based on experience. So, for instance, a job description today, if you go and look out in the world, you'll see something like 3 years of Python, 6 years of security architecture, whatever it is. It's like the amount of time that a human needs experience with something. And it's usually pretty vast and wide, and it's not super tangible. And what I'm talking about, if you look at job descriptions at CyberSN, I'm talking about, I want 30% application security, and then underneath application security, here's the actual tasks and projects that you'll be doing for me. And that could vary depending on each employer. And so therefore the employer has to take the time to really craft that. That's why we made it free, by the way, to do it, because I'll do anything to have everybody's job descriptions, be like this. I don't need to make money off of that. And so, at the end of the day, if employers actually put that job description, and a professional can be like, yeah, I'm an application security engineer, but I'm not that application security engineer, or I am, but I'm not interested in that job because it's 30% application security and I want 80% of my time doing that. I'm doing that now and I'm looking for more of that. You see how a human can select the right match, and then you don't have all this wasted time. Like, just because somebody's qualified doesn't mean they're interested, and just because they're interested doesn't mean they're qualified. And with using the taxonomy of professionals also making their profiles using that same free technology, what happens is, great matching. So much so that my matching service is 5-to-1. We give you 5 professionals, and it's 100% money back guarantee. Not that they're qualified, and interested, or not that they're interested and qualified, and not just on the job. Money, location, the whole thing. I mean, when you simplify the actual workload down, then the other items are easily automatable. Location.
I like that. Yeah, I haven't seen a job description out there that says something to the effect of, seeking engineer-minded personnel to accelerate digitization in a relatively mature cyber program versus seeking builders and kind of visionaries to jumpstart a cyber program from zero to something. Where the cyber security journey is for the actual asset owner, I say asset owner, who's customer, whoever has the job open, that is so huge. And I never see it inside of a role, because I did a piece the other day on the top 3 things to ask the potential employer. And one of them was in an interview, and one of them was, and I think it kind of dovetails with what you're saying, is, hey, if you could choose one thing, employer, that we accomplish in the next 12 months, what would it be? And then the following question is, where do you see me playing a part? And the third question is, what's your weakest part of it? None of that was really focused on the job or the skills, but it elicits from the actual employer, what are the real challenges here, and am I the right fit for it? Because if I'm not going to be interested. And if I'm not interested, I'm not going to stay there because I'm not challenged.
Yes. There's so many consequences to a poor match, both
Right.
for the employer and the professional. And a lot of it is actually, mental stress for the professional that is just ridiculous. And so at the White House and in the SANS report that was released yesterday, there's 5 top issues that, we all are focused on. And the number one thing is job descriptions. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've solved this so long ago. I'm so sick of talking about it. I know what the disconnect is. Think about it. Think about this.
I have you just say, hey, I have an app for that. And I'm here all day,
I mean, beyond the fact that I haven't completely owned SEO yet, the only other reason why my solution isn't in front and being utilized by everybody is that, there isn't strong relationships from HR to internal talent to managers spending the time working together to fill roles. It's a lot of, throwing it over the fence type of relationship right now. And I think that that's because recruiters are recruiting for all kinds of jobs. It's not really fair to throw them cyber jobs in internal recruiting. And they're overwhelmed. And so there's just a lot of territorial stuff, as well as, overwhelm that people are getting to. And I also think we were early. So I'm hoping that everybody now can get that problem off their plate, use it. It's free. Can even post it. And then the second thing I just want to say real quickly here is that, the ONCD director of Biden administration really talked about, aligning to the NICE framework, right? And again, everything we do is aligned and even extended upon the NICE framework. And so the need for a common language is what I'm saying. With the federal government and the commercial space and state and local government, if we all speak one language of what these jobs are and what the tasks and the projects are, then we can move the needle here a bit. So yes, that's what we need to get everybody to understand. And past that, it's about looking at career pathing for these people.
Well, it's interesting. I found this particular data point interesting. There's almost double, maybe triple roles inside of defense, then product security, then management, then GRC. Besides the data itself, because the next slide goes into the roles itself, is there any other trends that you're seeing from the top sectors that are looking, or the top categories of roles that you'd add to this?
Yes, IAM continues to haunt us all, right? And those roles are constant. We did see a little bit of a decline, but we saw a lot of decline in many roles recently. But even so, when you see a decline in job postings, you can also note that those jobs either went to contract roles or they went out of this country. So it isn't to say that the need isn't there anymore. It's to say that people are now looking for either a different solution, i.e. leaving the country, which we're seeing a lot of outsourcing right now, and as well as, contractors. When there's an economic shift, perm hires, perm direct hires goes down, contract work goes up. Most people don't post contract jobs as much as they do perm, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of companies went outside. So anyhow, this breakdown gives you a little bit more, of the insight here.
The
And
way I look at this was
yeah.
engineers and analysts are still the top roles. Not to
Yes.
say leadership roles aren't there. I mean, part of that could be, do you have an average that you find on the number of engineer and analyst roles per company or per CISO or per director? Any data there that
I mean, I think that you can look at the challenge of that data is what is the MSSP doing and where does what part of the analyst work lie. So it can be done as a very specific vertical, custom, data set that we can get to. At the end of Uh-oh, sorry about that. I don't know if it's me or are we
I
back?
think you're back. Yeah, we can edit that out. It's cool. I think we're still live.
I'm sorry. I think that oh, are we?
Still coming in a little choppy, but it's okay. We're still live. If you maybe want to jump out and jump back in, we'll stay
Maybe
here.
just wait a second here until Joe.
No, you're back, Deidre. So for those of you who are still with us and can hear us, our guest is going to be joining us just in a moment. To me, I think this is pretty interesting on the particular roles. We always hear about these manager roles, these director level roles, but how many of the roles at the engineer or the analyst level are not filled? I thought that this was a pretty awesome roll up. Looks like this data is coming all the way through 2023. What I was surprised against is how many roles there are in GRC. And it looks like those went down 14 and 12% respectively for a risk analyst or a cybersecurity privacy attorney. So how that dovetails with some of the new developments within the governance domain, the governed domain of NIST, that should be pretty interesting. Very interesting to see these overall roles. We're going to continue to proceed, and Deidre is back. We add her to the stage. Hey, Deidre, you good?
Yeah, the hotel Wi-Fi kicked me off. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. I think I kept it alive for you. So the takeaways, I have a real quick question. So defense had the largest amount of roles. Is that government in general, like the Department of Energy? Where would that be? Is that considered defense?
No, defense roles, the way to be thinking about defense, and I think that I've heard this before, so maybe we should make it more clear. But defense is the job category, and under defense is application security, cloud security, cyber insider threat, cybersecurity specialists, administrators.
Oh, this is not sector. Totally my mistake.
It's 13 functional roles, which
Got
is
it.
also vulnerability management, threat management.
it.
All falls
Got it.
under defense. So the reason
So
why
we're
we're seeing this defense issue is that we're in vulnerability hell, as I call it, out in the world. There's
Well,
so many people managing that.
Well, the biggest challenge that I see in the market is when you think about the different NIST domains, there is not a shortage of solutions out there that can give you an inventory that can tell you what your vulnerabilities are. There is a shortage of people to action on those insights. There is a shortage of people to actually manage, configure, and implement those solutions. And I think that's because we threw so many products in the market. I actually believe, from a planning and a management and a GRC perspective, if there was an increase in those roles, there could potentially be a lot of savings on the defense side or on the actual remediation and implementation side of your roadmap. So it's a separate conversation, but now, no, I appreciate that level of clarity. So when you think about key takeaways from 22 to 23, what were the big things that that you saw within your data set?
The scariest part for me was seeing the product security and the DevSecOps, knowing how much of our attacks are hitting all of us as vendors, right? Partners, such that we're all using products, and to see that go away. And I checked in on this with a lot of my contacts, and it's true. If you're and particularly a tech security leader, and you're told that you've got to cut no matter what, you don't have a choice. Are you going to choose, your all the operational security work? No, because that business is going to scream and yell all day long at you, and there's so much to do. So product security is where people cut, and this is where it really hits the road for me, the rubber, because here we are on one side of the world saying, hey, product security, everybody needs to be responsible, got to make products super reliable to help organizations not have breaches, and capitalism comes along and makes money expensive and makes tech companies have to lay people off, and security people were on that list. And that's the first time we've ever seen that in our industry.
Well, this concept of safe, reliable, profitable operations is a mainstay for me, right? So we have to keep our critical sectors driving. We have to keep them profitable. But you bring up a great point. How much are you going to take budget away from the cybersecurity roles? Now, bunch of different thought models here. I think that some of the budget has been transferred from a corporate security budget and it's moved over to operations. So the data can be a little bit skewed. And I think that's going to keep happening more and more, where operations are paying for security. But because what's happening is, in this theme of digitization at the corporate level for cyber, what they're really talking about is digitizing and decentralizing cybersecurity work at the facility level. We're talking about chemical facilities, oil and gas facilities. So when we think about products actually being built, I see actually an increase in the number of dollars being put towards product security, secure development, lifecycle, certifications that it's being built on a regular basis. So, but to your point, that doesn't mean that the job roles, they could be outsourcing that. And I see that happening a lot. So it's interesting. So what was the top category that grew in the last year? You say response?
Yeah, and the Chief Information Security Officer, which I think has a lot to do with regulation and also needing people to speak to the board.
So that's 23% in a year increase in the number of job descriptions, i.e., roles for CISOs. That means posted. So does that mean that we think that some of our companies and asset owners and customers out there didn't have a CISO role? Or is this job posting because they either want to grow the role or they want to put in, they're replacing somebody? How do we uncover that 23% growth a little bit?
It would be an organization looking to hire a Chief Information Security Officer, or maybe even a staffing agency posting the job. But it's all of our data comes from if it's posted out on the job boards, we have it. If it's on a Fortune 500 website, we have it. And we take it down every 30 days. And so the value of looking at the data is now that we have over 2 years of data, and the economic shift started, June 2022 is when it started, and when we started to see it, May, June. So right now, about 2 years, and usually staffing talent, businesses see this much more sooner than everybody else. Everybody else felt it in October of 2022. But anyhow, if you look at that data, it says, okay, in 2022, we thought we needed many more people than we said we need in 2023, regardless of, where it was. And then some roles, we said we needed them more. And that's the way to kind of think about the data. But to your point, certain industries skews the numbers. So for instance, the tech companies laid off tons of people in product security and DevSecOps, but
They did.
the IoT, manufacturing, utilities, they're hiring those people.
It's
Uh,
it, it, it is very skewed because you could look at the product companies in cyber and what their hiring has been because it's flattened out. Well, that's correlated directly to the investment money they brought in. But when you take a look at service integrators, major consulting companies, as well as original equipment manufacturers, they're all just ticking straight up. So I think what we're seeing is the question I wrestle with: where is the industry going as it relates to who's going to secure this thing?
yeah,
If this
yeah,
thing is a PLC, if this thing is an entire chemical plant, if this thing is an IoT device or a wearable, I think the industry is still trying to figure out whose responsibility that is, especially when it comes to products. Because if I put a product in place, it may come with a managed service for 2 years. And so what I'm concerned about is that when the P&L gets tight or interest rates start to go up, there's not as much free cash within a given sector. Transportation is a great example of this. Penny margins, having to do a lot more with a lot less. And they have continually relied on the service integrators, the product companies, and the OEMs. What happens when they can't rely on them that year? They don't have a basis of maturity in their own company with their own employees. And so we
yeah.
see this kind of seesaw method of where they're deploying their resources across contractors, employees, and products. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges as it relates to people. And that's why if you're going to maintain a small team, make sure that you retain them and you train them as well as you can so they can weather any storm. And I think that people haven't gotten on board with that idea yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, knowing that certain industries are doing well and others are not is how, money changes hands. And that has happened. None of us thought we'd see it in impacting healthcare or impacting, you know, the livelihoods the way that it is today. And so I think that what's happening is that everybody's responsible for security in a company now. And to your point of things moving into operations and decentralization, there has to be this, cyber hardly has any people. It's like 1 to every 50 IT or 100
Yes.
IT to 1 cyber professional, depending on the company. This has to be a collective effort. And so I think that organizations that understand that are doing the things they need to do, and the ones that are just succumbing to P&L are putting risk as not a problem for them.
Yeah.
I can't say
Well,
it in any other way. I mean,
well, we lay over one more challenge. I've got another slide up. We talk about gender disparity. We talk about workplace exclusion. Dive into this, and then we're going to transition into retention of cyber talent. What's the data telling us about equality in general in the workforce for cyber?
Gosh, I mean, it's telling us that a lot of women in general have come together and have started to make change and build programs. And, there's a lot of organizations and government support to helping get women into cybersecurity. And we're moving the needle there. And yet once they're in, we're finding tons of challenges. And, it's not new to me. This isn't new information. I get calls on a regular basis. It's one of the reasons why also at the end of the White House session yesterday, I spoke again. I asked to speak. I just put myself out there and said, listen, I'd be remiss if I left without, ringing the bells for women in security. And as the founder of Secure Diversity, not-for-profit, working on this, women are getting more and more discouraged, and we're seeing more and more data that says they're leaving at that, 8 to 10 years. And while, that can also be attributed to having children and making a life choice to stay at home, you will also find that women are also not satisfied at work based on how they're treated and the lack of equal promotion and the lack of equal respect and communication. And it wears on people. And then you put on top of it layoffs and watching friends struggle, and we've got a real problem. And I really called for emotional intelligence training. Let's get the training to people that they need on how to manage others and the responsibility of it and what it means. And so, we're making progress because we don't, we're together, building networks to support each other, and programs and things like that. We've still got severe problems. I mean, if we just look out in the world and see what's going on, or even in the US in this conversation with reproductive rights being taken away this year, you can't say that, you can't think that doesn't, like, that mentality that women can't think for themselves, govern their own bodies, make their own, choices, doesn't, come down into the workforce.
Yeah,
We
it's
must.
definitely it's an interesting time. And I see, for me, I speak with as many, I have a very diverse group of people that have been on the show. And it's funny because some places diversity is encouraged, and you can just see in the way that they hire, the way that they talk about teams. Diversity is, hey, it goes across the board. I'm going to hire people that maybe don't have the perfect skill set, but they're the right people for the job. I think it all dovetails into culture. But it's kudos to you for presenting it at such a high level up at the White House. I know that there is a very, very strong group of female CISOs here in the Houston region, and I follow a lot of different folks on multiple podcasts that are on my LinkedIn feed. And I think we're trending in the right direction, but it takes action, and it takes work, and it takes bringing it to light. So I appreciate you sharing this particular data point. But when we think about what it's doing for actual businesses, talk a little bit about that, because I was very interested in this slide and the next one on what does that do and how do we really look at the data?
Yeah. Well, two things. One is, this is a national security issue. I've been saying it for almost 10 years, which is our attackers are diverse. And in the business of defense, how do you defend against attackers when you don't know how they think, feel, and perceive? I mean, that is social engineering 101. And
Right.
unless we have people on our teams that are diverse, and it's not just gender, it's socioeconomics, it's
Right.
military, it's age, it's race, it's religion, because that's how we're going to come up with the best defense strategy. So there's that. And if women, which this poll shows here, don't feel respected, well, that's not, we're just going to lose them. There's other jobs out there that, that they can go to, that STEM training or whatever background they have can get them once they've, certainly once they're in. So the respect thing being so high, the respect issue being so high just really bothers me. It just, as somebody that didn't have to deal with that, as somebody who was hired out of college by two serial entrepreneurial men, and I worked for them for 21 years across 3 different companies they owned, I never felt this way. And
Right.
that's why I do what I do. I mean, there's no question that I am in the
It's
position I
not
am
necessary.
because of it.
It's not
Yeah, it's
necessary,
not
is what you're saying. You lived
necessary.
the world, now you're sharing a different experience. I couldn't be more, people say when I was in the Army that you never know whether you had a great boss or a not great boss until you left. It takes
The next
change for you to recognize what was before you. And so I love that story that you experienced positive things, and now you're trying to go tell the world it doesn't have to be the way it is, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and there's a full program to it. It's not just a mentality. It ties into, clear roles and responsibilities, clear promotions. So there's that, and, feeling excluded. I totally get that. Another reason why I feel like I'm in the scene I'm in is I didn't birth children. I didn't physically have children. I say physically just because I do, I'm number 7, so I'm a serious auntie. So while I didn't birth them, I certainly put a lot into them. But my point is that that's a big difference. And so I was able to be everywhere at any time, and I still have that luxury, if you will, because, let's face it, women still are the caretakers by majority of children. It doesn't mean that there aren't amazing fathers out there. Families are choosing women to stay home more than men still today, or to spend the time, or to go to the school, or to do whatever. And so I think that there's a level of an exclusion feeling from that. I think there's a level of exclusion feeling from just, not having a network, not, having the friendships and the relationships that a lot of the men have. And there's also this, which is huge, this, if you're technical and you're a woman and you're challenged more than you'd ever believe. It's a constant, it's a daily thing. And
I, I,
that is
I
where
see it. I see it on social media.
yeah.
I see it when I see a panel at a cyber conference. I think it's really challenging to be, and I'm saying this sympathetic, not empathetic. Okay, I'm a father. I run my own company. I'm married. All of these things, but there is still a difference when you're a woman and you're a professional and you have a career and you're good at that career. You're smarter than a lot of your other peers, and you still have a family to manage. It's very easy to kind of poke holes, and I don't think we're past that. I really don't. I think that it is very, very challenging for a woman in today's U.S. workforce to be the best version of herself professionally and personally, because the structures just they don't work. Even in, you send your kids to school, it's like, hey, we got early dismissal at 12 o'clock today. Come pick them up. And then it's like,
Yeah.
how am I just going to stop work to go get these kids? So you're trying to do the best you can. And my hat is off to the women in the workforce, especially in this, with such pressure that they have in the cyberspace. It's really, it's tough. And I think that it takes some trailblazers. I'm going to skip this slide because I really just want to get into this conversation, which is one that I think is most important. And that is, how do we retain the talent, Deidre? Because, one of the things that I think of is, are you tracking any wage growth alongside this? Like, are people being compensated enough to stay in the role, or are they leaving for more compensation? Is it kind of a runaway train? Let's talk about the act, because that's the other piece is, if wages are stagnant, why would somebody continue to stress themselves out when they have all these other stresses in their life at that 8 to 9 to 10 year mark? What are your thoughts on that?
So the SANS surveys and all the research we just did came back and said that the number one reason people are leaving their jobs is career development, the lack of career development planning. And of course, we see that. That's the number one thing we look for. We look for, how long has somebody been with the same title, in terms of we in our professional services recruiting arm. How long has somebody been with the same title? How long, when do they have a career development plan? And if they don't, they're super recruitable, because every human wants that, even if they love where they're working.
Dive into that a little bit. So when we talk about career development, this is the way I take that. I can think of an interview that I did with someone, let's say 2.5 years ago. And I said, hey, this is your job you're interviewing for, but I wanted to let you know, these are the other 3 jobs, depending on the trajectory of the organization. These are the places that you would go. Mm-hmm. That, I think, got him really excited about the role. And the most beautiful part about it, he's in one of those roles now. Is that what you mean by, at least at the beginning, like career development, like this is where you can go? Or are we talking about, hey, I'm going to send you to training, or I'm going to send you to, add some more skills, or both?
I think it's both. I think that, with good relationships, we don't have to have as clear of plans for people to be retained, as long as they know there's a plan and it's checked in on, but that's risky. I think that what we're really talking about is people are looking for, where can I be in 2 years? Where can I be in 3, 5 years? I don't want to just wait. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I run into. They're just so bored at what they're doing and they want to be more challenged. Humans need to be challenged. And right. So there's this disconnect of how long it should take somebody to be able to get to the next level, or, no roadmaps, no training program. So it could be from, a company's doing nothing to they're doing pieces of, it's a program, and it has to align to your security strategy or to your company's strategy of how you're going to continue. Yeah, you have to do that. And that's what we do. We come in and what's your strategy? And then what's everybody doing? Really understanding what every human's doing, literally down to the MSSPs, the consultants and the contractors, never mind the FTEs. and document that by tasks and projects, and look at operational efficiency based on talent as well as security programs, and give security leaders the insight they need because they don't have the time to gather that insight themselves, and then give it to them with a way to manage it so that they can, manage people's careers, basically, is what has to be done. And we can't, as security leaders, only rely on HR. We need to utilize HR. We need to utilize custom solutions for our industry, like what we're doing. And we need to find the operational efficiency that allows the time for managers to participate in the development of their people and themselves.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot when we're fighting in, attacks and dealing with operations, which is why it's a custom solution. It's not a do-it-yourself.
It has to be, and I think that's the role of the managers, the directors, and the CISOs. While you were talking, I kind of visualized this. Why is it so hard to retain talent in cyber? And here's what my thought is. If I'm going to be in HR, I'm going to learn some HR practices, but it's all centered around the people, right? If I'm going to be a salesperson, then I'm going to learn sales tactics, but it's all around a customer and a product. If I'm in operations, my job is right here. It starts at that part of the assembly line. It ends right here. It's pretty focused. When we bring in people to security roles, regardless of the organization, people, process, technology is all the things they have to focus on. On top of that, they have a different maturity level that they're operating within, and that maturity level is going to keep growing. Mm-hmm. To me, I think we've always focused on very technical skill sets, and I'm not opposed to it, okay? But walk with me here. You're hiring people that have a technical skill set, but you're asking them to operate in one of the most ultra dynamic environments. And I think you got to choose one or the other. If I'm a CISO tomorrow, I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to hire this group of people because they all need to be ready to jumpstart the organization and their cyber journey. That's a different kind of team that I need that's going to be accelerating or documenting or digitizing a journey. And I could run my cyber teams that way, or I flip the script and I say, look, I need these 4 controls locked down and matured over the course of the next 24 months. So I'm going to actually go find incident response expertise. I'm going to actually go find patch management, vulnerability expertise. I'm going to go find somebody who's all about policies and procedures. And I think what do you think about both of those different approaches? Because I think it's very hard to do both. Do you agree?
Doing any of this is hard. I mean, there's literally no time for security leaders to do this, which is why I personally created this arm 2 years ago. We have to, just like products are there to solve other things, not only services and products need to solve this. And so here's what I think. I think that talent and how we're utilized is a planning exercise that goes along with strategy. And sometimes we should hire FTEs, and sometimes we should hire contractors, and sometimes we should hire consultants to do the work. The getting ahead of the work by a few years is the challenge, and having that plan, because at the end of the day, that if a role really should be a contract role for 3 to 6 months, get some work done, and we're out, or a year, and you hire somebody who thinks they're going to be there for 3 to 5 years because you're a big company and you've got, they're thinking they've got a home, but in a year, that work that they're doing is kind of dead. And maybe they picked up some other things and they've got the title still and they're making good money, but they're now not challenged. And not only do you lose them, but you probably didn't have documentation and the things you would have liked to have had before you lose them. You didn't have a plan of what you're going to do now that they're gone. And so my point is to say, if we get ahead of this all by years and look at the work that needs to get done, to your point, for digitization, to AI, to security itself, and plan out what getting work done, like literally planning out getting work done from the perspective of talent before you even engage any firm or any FTEs. One can work with a plan that can empower the individuals to know what the future looks like, and to operationally run not only more soundly in terms of, less chaos, but certainly in funding and understanding what money's going to look like and what you need and all those things that continue to challenge everybody. So, it's about working, talent from the perspective of what's good for them and what's good for an employer. And all of that is planning. And then if you're going to keep them and it's not a contract role that's short lived, you got to invest in the plan of where they're going to be in
I
2 years
so.
or 5 years
So
or
you
you lose them for sure.
I did a piece, a small video the other day about how I personally believe that the CISO, the OT director role, is transitioning far more into a teamwork and a planning role than it is a technical acumen role. And I think this supports that theory. One question. What's the one thing that a hiring manager can ask him or herself to answer this question? Should I hire somebody or should I subcontract? How do they make that decision?
Yes, I think, if the work that they need done, that they feel they have for this person is continuous, it doesn't end, they should hire somebody direct. If they need to, for instance, we put people on projects for a year as contractors, not even consultants, to, help IT go to the cloud or implement a SIM or what have you. And there's those architects are fine doing that for a year and then taking their next gig, or maybe they'll go perm after that. Like there is no work for them after implementation.
I
You
like
go to a consulting firm, you're going to pay 3 times more. So, I want everybody to start thinking about the money they spend on MSSPs, the money they spend on consultants, and the money they spend on contractors and FTE direct hires. It's all talent. It's all talent. The MSS people, it's all your talent. That's humans behind technology, right? So that you're paying for. So
and
so
you're
what
saying
are you doing? Does that work for you? Does it not work for you? Does it look right for your strategy? And that's
so
what
you're actually
I'm
saying
loving.
talent management does not stop at the FTE. You've got
No
to
way.
have a talent management mindset for the consultants, for the contractors, and
Everybody.
for your monthly recurring service teams.
Yeah.
Good. That's
Yeah, to
a
leverage,
that's an
to be
insight that I hadn't thought
progressively
about.
improving. Yes, yes. And so that giving that power and that view to security leaders to then make great decisions on how they are going to continue to leverage each of those things and change at different times.
I like it. I mean, I like where your head is at. So let's say you got to build some policies and procedures. We all know that consultants will come in and say, hey, we have a full, life cycle approach to how you can build out all these procedures. But the majority of the folks that I see, they just need to write them and they need to get them out. There should be some training on the front end, some implementation on the back end. But that's an example, I think, of somebody that, hey, once I get that body of policies and procedures written, besides training internally, which we can do a train the trainer, you don't need that, right? Maybe it's installation of a certain type of equipment.
Right.
And you're
Right.
saying CISOs in general do or do not make poor choices about the who. We're not talking about the personality or the skills. We're talking about maybe they hire somebody to be an FTE when they probably could have done a contractor, achieved the same outcome, and then at month 13, 14, 15, they don't have a growth plan. That person leaves and then they're stuck again.
Yes. Or the person that's there could be somewhere else that's going to invest in them and give them 3 to 5 years, but they didn't get that opportunity because this isn't a 3 to 5 year opportunity. I don't think chief security or security leaders are doing a bad job in anything. I am shocked at how we're even able to hold this all together today. They've been understaffed, under budgeted, fighting for, everybody to understand that security touches every single department to include physical buildings, is still upon them. And yet I know that with the support that we give, we can empower them to make strong decisions, to say that they're that they're not making strong decisions now is not the case. They're making strong decisions with the views that they have, that they don't have the view of what everybody is actually doing. That's one of the things that hit me the most, and why I decided to develop this service, is that I realize security leaders are very removed from the day-to-day of what anybody in their org is actually doing. And it's very possible that somebody with an engineering title is actually doing architecture work, or heavily involved in GRC, or is fighting the fight of IAM, and they don't even know it. And before looking at their resources, it's like, oh, 75% of your people are all over IAM. We should look at IAM and find a better solution over there. That kind of, but you don't know when you see titles and job descriptions from whenever they were hired that didn't mean shit, and all of these things. And that's where I was like, oh my gosh, I can give that power to security leaders, and it's been so rewarding.
Well, I
To
appreciate that perspective, because
yeah,
they
I
do
was
need
going to
the
say, to your
kudos,
point.
because they are doing well.
Yes,
But please proceed.
yes, we need to help them. They're our lifeline to winning every day, which is really what's going on. It's basically war every day. And these are our protectors and their teams. And I think about them all the time. It's blows my mind that they're able to deal the way that they are. And let's face it, they also have high burnout stats, and many of them are retiring early because of how hard it is. So
It's a
we
tough
got to
world out
keep
there. I
getting
love that
out there.
you're. Well, we gotta. I always say hug a CISO, right? Hug a security leader,
Yes,
because they
yes.
need it. I just tagged you in a video that I put out yesterday about this particular topic, which
Oh, great.
is how is a CISO evolving? Check it out. I'd love your comments, because
Yeah.
oftentimes I think we get so tied up in the technical nature of cybersecurity that we forget the human side. And kind of bringing it all to a close, I love your story. I love stories about entrepreneurs seeing something in society that's broken. In your particular case, the job searching and matching system was broken. And I appreciate you sharing your insights, because you're not out there just saying it's broken, we need to fix it. You're saying, look, here are the real underlying reasons why it's broke. Oh, and by the way, here's the business outcomes. We're spending more money than we probably should because of this cyber talent management. I think it's you've opened my mind to a ton. I'll give you the last couple minutes to close this out. This has been really exciting.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having the conversation. I know that people are overwhelmed right now. A lot of people are feeling imposter syndrome, and so I'm hoping that our conversation showed everybody that there's still lots of jobs out there. It's just really a nightmare to find them. So make it a social engineering project. Turn it into an opportunity. Work hard at networking and bang on tons of doors. Know what you want. You'll do great with that attitude. No imposter syndrome. It's not necessary. And other than that, anybody going to RSA, let me know. I'll be there. And besides
Very
SF.
cool. Deidre, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you're doing for the industry. Join us, ladies and gentlemen, on the Business of Cyber, May 7th at 10 a.m. Central. We're going to be joined by an insurance expert, specifically putting a ton of her effort into the operational technology side of the market. How does cyber insurance fit into your role in 23 and 24, or excuse me, 24 and 25? Time is flying by. Join us, and thanks so much for your time today, folks. Enjoy.